From your local election headquarters, this is Debate Night in New York.
Cannot be at the table. They're a terrorist organization.
Why can't you say
and the state of Palestine, why can't you wait till your rebuttal? I'm trying to follow the rules that Dan and Henry have set out.
It was certainly a fiery night on the debate stage here at PIX11, your local election headquarters. Good evening. I'm Grace Gomez. Thank you for joining us for Debate Night in New York. The two Democratic candidates for the New York 16 Congressional District, incumbent Representative Jamal Bowman and his challenger, Westchester County Executive George Latimer, squaring off on various issues. There's a lot we have to get into. Let's get started with political analyst J.C. Polanco. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. What a great debate, Grace.
It's been a very, very competitive from the beginning. So who did you think won tonight?
That's a great question. First, kudos to Dan and Henry. What a great job tonight moderating this fiery debate. You saw the fireworks. There was no love lost between these two candidates. I think it was a well-run debate by the candidates and the moderators. But I have to tell you, I think it was very substantive. So if you're watching this debate tonight, I don't think you're going to convince any of your base followers to whether or not they're going to support you or not. They're with you 100%. But I have to tell you, on the substance, both candidates brought their A game, and they really dealt with the issues that they cared about the most, that they know their followers, that their donors, and that their voters care about. And I think that they went and hit it out the park tonight. Both of them did.
Yeah, and you know, there's been some international issues that have sort of become local for Westchester County. There were actually some heated accusations about race, and we have that clip. We're going to play it for you right now.
We've done a lot to deal with the problems of racial inequality. We've joined an organization called GARE, which is implementing department by department systemic efforts to try to undo racism. I have been the most progressive county executive in this state in dealing with these issues.
When did you join GEAR, by the way?
We joined it 2 years ago. You should have had a little better research to check it up. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Pay more attention to the specifics.
Yeah, because when you look at the impact of racial justice during his administration, there is no impact.
That
and the people in the district know that, and everyone knows.
Stay out there.
He's giving a rebuttal.
And everyone knows my record on fighting for racial justice, first as an educator, middle school principal, and now as a member of Congress.
What do you make of that response? First of what Latimer said and then Bowman's response.
Listen, Westchester has been plagued with this notion that it's a racist county, and there's been racial issues there that folks have been debating about for decades, from affordable housing to segregation in schools and the like. So I think it's a cheap shot to accuse the county executive of being racist, considering that he has a lot of support in endorsements from very, very powerful elected officials across New York that are supporting him, including but not limited to the first black governor of New York. I think that's an incredible statement. Former Congressman Mondaire Jones is supporting him. You have a lot of folks that are supporting the county executive that are black and Latino. So that's a cheap shot. Now, the truth is this. You know, Congressman Bowman is a former educator. I'm a former educator, especially in the areas where he taught. So this issue of race and racial inequality matters and hits home for a lot of us who grew up in certain parts of the Bronx, and we understand his messaging there. The argument that I think County Executive Latimer is making is, what are you blaming me for? What exactly are you saying that I'm not doing? What are you saying that I have not done? I think that when you take a look at what Congressman Bowman is talking about, he's talking about specifically the most urban brown and black areas of Westchester County, which I think are going to be the strongest supporters he has going into this primary on June 25th. So it's a low blow to do that to County Executive Latimer, considering that I haven't found any racism coming out of County Executive Latimer at all. But we do know one thing. The folks that are supporting Congressman Bowman believe that we have to deal with systemic issues and racism in this country holistically. And a lot of those folks tend to be pretty radical on this issue, and they will throw the term racism out for absolutely anything. And quite frankly, I'm giving him kudos, Congressman Bowman, for holding his own tonight. But launching that word racism against County Executive Latimer something that will dilute the strength of that argument, considering that there's nothing racist that the county executive has said or done to accuse him of such a thing.
And you just mentioned some of the endorsements that Latimer has received. That speaks volumes.
It does speak volumes, and I think it really sets a tone, because right now the county executive and the congressman are running for a very diverse district race. It's a very diverse district. Now, when you take a look, it's majority people of color in this district. That's important. A lot of folks that are watching this may not have known this, considering the district itself. When you take a look at this district, you're looking at Rye, Port Chester, Harrison, White Plains, Elmsford, Yonkers, Mount Vernon. You're looking at a lot of parts of Westchester that are not exactly diverse to some of the places that are very diverse. But the plurality of this district is white, right? So you're looking at a district that is incredibly diverse, majority minority. Does the argument of launching an attack against County Executive Latimer as a racist, will that carry Congressman Bowman through the primary? I don't think so. But again, to your point, those endorsement matters. Consider this, that the district also includes Co-op City, Wakefield area of the Bronx, which has one of the highest Caribbean populations in the entire state. Now, it's diverse in the Bronx as well. That is why it was so important for County Executive Latimer to get endorsements from very powerful Black and Latino leaders across New York.
And let's actually, sticking with the subject of Bowman, actually, PIX11's Henry Rossop is standing by with Representative Jamal Bowman. Henry, what can you tell us?
And Congressman Bowman, thank you for taking a couple of extra minutes with us. I almost wanted to offer you an expanded closing statement. I know us timekeepers, we can be real sticklers up there, but what do you hope people really take away from watching this evening?
Yeah, well, I hope people take away that this race is really about the many versus the money. It's about the working class people, the people in the district who have felt ignored for a very long time versus powerful, very wealthy special interests, mostly Republican billionaires who are trying to buy this seat from the people and bombard the people with advertisements and mailers to paint me as this bad person in Congress. We've brought over $1 billion to the district, and we've invested in areas like housing, mental health, health care, violence reduction, dealing with the issue of reducing gun violence, workforce development, and so many other programs. And so my opponent rarely talks about health care. He rarely talks about concrete things he's done for affordable housing. He rarely talks about the issues that the people of the district most care about, reducing gun violence, affordability. And he doesn't talk about affordability because he works for Republican right-wing billionaires who are spending more money in this race than any PAC has ever spent in the history of our country. And so that's the contrast. It's the many versus the money. It's the working class versus the wealthy. And in order
if I could, please, Mr. Latimer, I'm sure would push back by this by saying, I think we counted something like 6 or 7 times just said, you are lying about his record. I think people hear that over and over and over. Why should people not believe that?
Yeah, well, that's the point, right? So he says, I'm lying, but then doesn't go into anything really substantive to defend the point that I made against him. You know, so my hope is people really listen to the content and understand that I didn't just name places in terms of places I've worked. I've named people I worked in collaboration with, money I brought in, programs we've started very specifically. And I've only been in Congress 3 years. I would argue that I've done more in 3 years than he's done over his 35-year career, especially as it relates to equity. If we don't have equity, we don't have a democracy.
Beginning with equity, is that how you view the way that you have governed? And if so, why do you think, based on our polling, with all due respect, a poll is a poll, the real poll's on Election Day, right. But why do you think maybe more people aren't seeing that?
I disagree that more people aren't seeing that. And again, a poll's a poll, the real poll is Election Day. You know, we've governed from the perspective of equity from the very beginning. You know, the ads have been astronomical, and I think it's influencing some people. Hopefully it doesn't influence all people. And then the issue of Gaza and me calling for a permanent ceasefire, that's the reason why he's running. That's the reason why he was recruited by a right-wing organization, AIPAC, to run in this race. And they're being dishonest to the voters by not running ads about Israel because they know the people aren't with them on that issue. They're running ads about votes I've taken 3 years ago on bills that actually passed and aren't hurting our district. And they're lying about my relationship with Biden. I work very closely with the president on the CHIPS and Science Act, the American Rescue Plan. I even brought him to the district to campaign for Governor Hochul when I was a freshman. And so he's not telling the truth.
Mr. Bowman, thank you for your time. Good luck.
So
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And we'll send it back to you, Grace.
Thank you, Henry. I want to get your thoughts, JC, on that last bit. I saw you smirking a couple of times. Yeah. Tell me what you thought about him. I mean, he was talking about the track record of Mr. Latimer. I saw you smirking a couple of times. You want to elaborate on that?
I did. I think it was pretty cool. Money over money. I mean, he had the jabs. And again, I think Congressman Bowman brought his A game tonight. The problem is that I'm listening to him, and there has to be an ideological disconnect between the congressman and that district. I mean, when you hear him, it's almost as if I'm listening to my fellow teachers and professors and how they speak and think about these issues, and I can definitely see him representing a district that maybe someone who's supported by the Democratic Socialists of America, maybe a district where the voters in that district will be happy to hear that DSA is supporting. So I hear that he's passionate about these issues. I feel it totally. It's almost like when I hear him talk about education, I'm reading Amazing Grace by Jonathan Kozol. So I understand his position, but I don't think that he's ideologically connected with what's happening in the district. And we're seeing it in the poll numbers. Now, he's right. The poll that matters is on primary day. But what's also interesting is the attacks against AIPAC. These are Americans that support Israel, that are supporting this organization. The idea that somehow this is a foreign organization, foreign governments are not allowed to participate in elections. They're not allowed to donate in elections. So these are Americans that are supporting this issue. So I think we have to be very careful on the attacks against AIPAC and what we're doing. But you can tell he brought in those one-liners today that were very good.
Yeah, and I actually want to stick to that subject, the topic of Israel war, because Latimer says Israel's war in Gaza is not genocide. Let's take a listen.
No, it is not genocide. Let me tell you what it is. It is the unwillingness of Hamas to sit down at the table. President Biden and Secretary Blinken offered a program this very week that had the support of the United Nations, also had the support of Israel's willingness to go along with it.
According to the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, there is a plausible genocide happening in Gaza right now. We need a permanent ceasefire. We have almost 40,000 dead. We have 16,000 children dead, and we have hundreds of thousands injured. He won't even acknowledge the existence of the Palestinian people, and he will not save Palestine.
This was a big moment during the debate. What are your thoughts of Bowman just pointing at him, say Palestine, and just the overall thoughts of this Israel-Hamas topic?
Grace, it's a driving force behind this primary. It's a driving force by the amount of support that County Executive Latimer is getting in this primary is exactly what's happening over 5,000 miles away. This is an issue that hits home to a lot of Americans and a lot of voters in this district. So the position that Congressman Bowman took right after the October 7th attacks really hurt a lot of folks in that district. A lot of folks that have an affinity to Israel, a lot of folks that care deeply about the Jewish state, a lot of folks that really despise Hamas and everything it stands for. And what we see there is the congressman has been relentless, attacking and focusing with the precision of a surgeon on saying that Israel is committing genocide. And I think that's very offensive to a lot of folks in that district. I think that County Executive Latimer's position is a more moderate position, is a position that's getting a lot more support in this district. But again, the question becomes, how did we get here? And I think if you look at the congressman's statements right after October 7th regarding whether or not what we were watching was Israeli propaganda, making these accusations really created an environment where he invited a primary like this in this district. So when you hear Congressman Bowman, and I'm sure a lot of folks would agree with me on this, he sounds like a very activated, passionate congressman that could represent a district. But I don't know if it's this district. It doesn't fit. The ideology that I'm hearing, the positions against Israel that I'm listening to, I don't know whether or not there's any congruency there. And we're going to see more of that being focused on in the commercials that are going to come out right before primary day, his positions towards Israel, his positions towards Gaza and Palestine. Now, this is a problem. The problem that the County Executive Latimer has is that we have to address the elephant in the room. We are watching Palestinians die. We're seeing the tragedy there. And he's walking a very delicate line, and you can see in this incredible debate tonight how he's trying to do it. Yeah. It's a very difficult thing to do. How is it that we could continue supporting Israel in a time where we're seeing famine hit the Gaza Strip? This debate is more than just any average race, any average political primary that we've seen.
Yeah,
this is passion.
And it's become a national, all eyes from the United States are watching this congressional race that from the beginning has been very, very filled with attacks from each other. And staying with the topic of Israel, one thing that came up was the visit of Prime Minister Netanyahu the next month. What are your thoughts on what they said?
Well, I think County Executive Latimer, and again, this is the right thing to do. If the minority leader is asking me to be there, I will be there. But again, you have to remember that Congresswoman Bowman has a base. And his base supports that decision of not showing up. His base supports his positions on Gaza and Israel. So we have to remember that. And I think he's doing an incredible job making sure that he represents that base in this campaign, in this debate, and he's doing it. Now, what is he going to do moving forward? I think that we're going to have to see what's going to happen on primary day. There needs to be a conversation that takes place. Were his comments about whether or not we're going to punish Iran, whether or not we're going to support a resolution calling Iran a terrible place, a terrible state, supporting terrorism, whether his opposition to that resolution was one of the main reasons why he's in this position in the polls, whether his opposition towards really focusing on the hurt that the Jewish state was dealing with, whether that was the reason why he's showing so poorly in the polls. Yeah. But remember, Grace, he has a base of folks, and including the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America. These folks greatly support Congressman Bowman and his positions that he's taken on Palestine and Gaza. So I wouldn't see any differences in the last few days before the primary.
All right, here at PIX11, we are trying to keep things very balanced. PIX11's Henry Zrasov just interviewed Representative Bowman a few minutes ago, and now he's standing by with Westchester County Executive George Latimer. Henry?
Mr. Latimer, thank you for staying a little bit later with us. We do like giving you this extra time because I know we got to be sticklers about time up there, but let's start with almost an elongated closing statement. What do you hope people take away from this evening?
Well, I think it's important to understand that government is a serious business, and running for Congress of the United States is not about a popularity contest. It's not if you have the right soundbite in a short period of time. It's whether or not you have the grasp to understand what it takes as a legislator to accomplish something, and so that not only from a district standpoint, but contributing to the overall nation, that you can do something of value. I've been in office for a number of years in a number of different positions, and I've proven that I can understand how to do that. I've been a legislator in Albany, and we've accomplished things during that period of time. And it's important to see that being the choice today. It's not the choice of how tall am I or how short am I or what my demographics are. It's whether or not I've got the ability to go there, represent people well, and be a contributing member of what should be a group of people that tries to address problems.
A number of times you really didn't mince words. You accused the congressman of lying and repeatedly said so. Why do you believe, in your view, he, quote unquote, lied so many times?
I don't know. I think perhaps he's in a difficult situation now. He sees the same polls that we all do, and he's behind, and he feels a need to attack. But, you know, most incumbents don't even mention their challengers if they can avoid it. They just talk about what they've done. And I don't think his record is strong enough to run on his record alone, so he has to go after me. And even what he barely says about my record is fabricated, and then he gets into who the donors are, as if that's the reason why I'm making public policy. So I think what it shows a lack of serious attention to what it is that concerns people and addressing those concerns, and rather trying to attack your opponent. So I had to fend off those attacks as best as I could.
Because he does make such an issue of the AIPAC money, the pro-Israel lobby. Do you have any personal reservations? I know you say it doesn't influence your policy or decisions, and you can't even control a lot of it. I get all of that. But do you have any reservations about some of these donors?
Look, what I would like to see is across-the-board campaign finance reform that eliminates big money in politics, and I would support a bill like that would pass. But I think what you have is to remember that he has a network of nationwide donors. He talks about donors that have come to me, and he never mentions that he's got 90% of his money from outside the district. If I went into this race and I did not have the support of the people in my district that feel strongly about these issues, he would swamp me with ads, and he wouldn't mind a bit about that. So I think there's a disingenuity in what he says. He's really trying to be answer to a problem that he's of his own making. If you recall, when he announced, he originally said, AIPAC, bring it on, yo. That was his words. He said that. And he wanted to sort of show that he was a tough guy and he could handle it. Well, now he doesn't seem like he handles it that well. The smart thing to do is work on what it is you intend to do. He talks about his issues, I talk about mine, and the people decide. That's the kind of campaign I wanted to. If you remember, when I first was interviewed with Dan, I didn't mention his name and I didn't attack him in that initial debate. My mindset was to try to have a fairly high-minded debate where we disagreed and where we agreed. But he chose not to run that kind of a race. And you saw the attacks were almost all launched from him to me. Most of my comments were in defense of my record and pushing back on him. So I think the voters understand that. They're going to see. They're going to make a decision on the 25th of June. I'll live with that decision either way, Henry. If I win, I'll go on. If I lose, I end my campaign.
Mr. Latimer, I appreciate your time. Thank you for it, and good luck, sir.
Thank you,
and
sir.
Grace, we're going to send it back to you.
Thank you, Henry, for that. When we come back, the moderator of tonight's debate, Dan Manarino, will join us for our discussion. Stay with us.
What happened to decency? It's gone in Jamal Bowman's New York. Jamal Bowman put a cop killer up on a middle school's wall of honor, calling the killer a tremendous figure. It's the same Bowman who spent his career pushing dangerous conspiracy theories, praising a known anti-Semite who claimed Jews were responsible for 9/11. New York deserves better than Jamal Bowman. Fair Shake is responsible for the content of this ad.
I'm George Latimer, and whether you live in Portchester, Greenburgh, or Co-op City, we're fed up with the chaos that's hanging over our heads. Trump extremists in Washington and a congressman spreading lies and conspiracy theories. You know me. I took on the NRA to ban gun shows and reduce gun violence and led the fight to protect access to reproductive health care. I'm George Latimer, and I approve of this message because together we can break through the dysfunction and get real progressive results.
Our economy was on the brink.
Defaulting on the debt would lead to a self-inflicted wound that takes our economy over a cliff and risks jobs and retirement savings, Social Security benefits.
Still, Jamal Bowman refused to compromise. Jamal Bowman voted against President Biden's debt limit deal, putting Social Security payments and our entire economy at risk. Jamal Bowman has his own agenda, and he's hurting New York. UDP is responsible for the content of this ad.
George Latimer has sold out to Republican donors, supporting Netanyahu's unpopular war over Biden's calls for peace. But Jamal Bowman always stands up for what's right.
I spent my life fighting for children and families, working with President Biden to reduce gun violence and protect abortion rights. We've delivered for the people, affordable housing, jobs, and lower drug costs. This is the many versus the money, and we will win. I'm Jamal Bowman, and I approve this message.
Okay, we're back with political analyst J.C. Polanco also joining us, the moderator of tonight's debate, Dan Manarino, and the host and managing editor of PIX on Politics. So I wanted to ask you right off the bat, what was the temperature in that room downstairs?
Look, I would say when they both came in the room, I think they were both very, very tense. And this has been pretty much the mood of the campaign, right? And you knew that they were going to go after each other. They were taking their notes right off the bat. But I think, and I think you guys were already discussing this was the most substantive that I've heard both of them on the issues, right? With less of the yelling, more on the issues, focused, making their points while disagreeing, but making their points heard.
I think it really comes down to what the constituents want, right? They don't want candidates that are yelling over each other. My next question for you was, what was the best moment of the night?
Well, hold on, just on your point about the rhetoric overall, I also think that Congressman Bowman may have toned his rhetoric down a bit because of the attacks, correct me if I'm wrong, from Latimer, saying that he was rhetoric over issues the entire time. That was the theme of George Latimer's campaign.
That's right.
So what do you think of that?
I think you're right. I think we saw a more substantive, more polished Congressman Bowman in this debate. That's what I started off with this evening. I had seen several of these before. I think he brought his A game tonight. And I think you got him with some very interesting, hard-hitting questions that put both of them against the ropes. And I think your question on reparations was just, it was just amazing. Because this is a district where, I know the district well. This is a district where that reparation discussion, I don't think it's going to poll very well. But you put both of them in a position where they got to take an unpopular position on a very hot topic, and they didn't shy away from it. And you cornered them until both of them agreed that they both agree on reparations.
Yes.
You should get an Emmy just for that.
Thank you very much. To your question, Grace, about the best moment of the night, I think that there were so many of them. Obviously, the Israel-Hamas is huge, a huge issue on the international and national scale. But if we're going to zero in on the local issues, I think the most important issue is the affordability crisis, housing, and how we're going to pay for things and how people are going to get their tax relief in terms of SALT, and that is what people are zeroed in on, and that was what our poll showed, right? Because people want the money back in their pockets.
Yeah.
So while the issues and the big moments came from larger issues like reparations, race, Israel-Hamas, I think people are laser focused on the real kitchen table issues that affect their wallet.
What about you, JC? What was the best moment?
No, I agree. I think there were several. Can I tell you, there were several really incredible moments, and I have to be honest with you, they all were about international and grandiose issues, and I really loved how, you put Congressman Bowman having to defend his record on not supporting Biden's big agenda.
Yeah.
Right now, Westchester is benefiting incredibly from it, so it's very tough to take credit for things that you had nothing to do with. We see Republicans do it across the country when they want to be at the groundbreaking on things they voted against. So very tough to deal with the issues in Westchester and the Bronx, not having supported President Biden's agenda. But then there's something else there. I think that Congressman Bowman was in a position to help with the SALT issue. We really didn't hear him take a position where I have done this about SALT. That's what matters to a lot of folks in Westchester who are paying enormous amount of money in property taxes. One of the highest tax counties in the entire country, if not the most expensive place as far as taxes go.
And when it comes to taxes,
and when it comes to property taxes,
they need both Republican. They need that majority to bring SALT back.
Yeah, they do. And I think that, this is one of the things I mentioned before. A minority leader, Jeffries, must be looking at this race saying, I cannot believe there's millions of dollars being spent on a primary when we got to win some Republican seats in Biden districts. And he must be pulling his hair out at night because there's a lot of money going into this race. And your viewers are watching the nonstop commercials. Like, there's a lot of passion behind this. This
and
campaign.
there are a lot of personal attacks on those commercials. And I also want to touch lightly and very quick before we get to our final thoughts on the poll numbers, because we've seen an increase on George Latimer's popularity, let's put it that way. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that he's going to win this primary?
When you look at the numbers, right, 48% to Latimer, to 31% to Jamal Bowman, 21% undecided. So that is a big, big chunk of the population, and it's going to be in terms of early voting, I think, in terms of the numbers of who goes out and votes right now. George Latimer is obviously leading in the poll numbers, but when you have that much of an undecided, you're the pro on this one.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I'm winning a lot of viewers yelling at me on Twitter and also on X, whatever it is. The polls are just so much in favor of County Executive Latimer. It's almost daunting if I'm on Congressman Bowman's campaign. How do you make up for this ground just right before a primary? And consider the kind of endorsements you're getting last minute are not going to bode well in this district. Democratic Socialists of America in this district? I don't think so. This is not Astoria. It's not going to bode well.
The ads, right, for George Latimer, obviously in his favor. But when you look at the social platforms, that goes in favor of Bowman. He has a very vocal audience on social media with AOC and so on and so forth. So it's really, I think Latimer's leading, but we're going to see how it all plays out.
I wish we had more time, gentlemen, but our time is up. So that does it for us. I'm Grace Gomez. Thank you for being with us. Stick with PIX11 for all your local election coverage. And remember, you can always check in with PIX11.com and our streaming service, PIX11 Plus. Have a great night.